was working on a Parkinson's study, and there were patients that were completely in a locked state that would start walking, and in some cases even better than what we saw with the drug that we knew was effective simply by being on the placebo. Most AI tools takes away your agency, it takes away your sense of self, your self-trust, because you become so reliant on this thing. People can't even write a message without asking ChatGPT, and soon you realize that this could be very dangerous for us.
So one can argue that the messages or the visions of the future self can only come from within, and you're using an approach where the messages potentially come from outside, from an external tool that tells you what that version looks like. How do you reconcile the two?
With AI, I think that you can create crutches for people, or you can create a mirror, right? And that's really what our aim is, to create that mirror. It's a really powerful tool to really help people see themselves for who they are. Our focus is to bring people back to themselves. That's the power of the voice as well. Back to your truth, back to your self-agency, back to your own knowing, your own intuition. Future Self is actually designed to do that. By design, it will guide you back to yourself.
Hello and very welcome to the Human Future Podcast. This is the show where we explore the fascinating intersection of accelerating technology, human consciousness, and the actionable steps that we can take today to contribute to a desirable human future. My name is Kirill. I'm so glad that you're here, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome, Gazal. Thank you for coming on the show. Excited for a conversation. So to start off, you spent about 20 years plus in the industry of like clinical trials, working on placebo and trying to separate placebo from the actual hard data, and it's like a behavioral thing that you were trying to understand from, and you're going to talk more a little bit more about that. And then now you are in the business of connecting you to your higher self, which is how did this all happen? Maybe start by saying what is higher self, and then we will unpack a little bit more about the experience, how you got what you're working on now, and so let's start there.
Sure. So I don't necessarily use the term higher self.
Okay.
It's future self.
Future
But
self, that's
essentially, I would say the same thing. Your higher self is your true essence, who you truly are. You know, underneath the conditioning that most of us go through. So your true essence, essentially. And your future self is really the same thing, right? Your ideal future self. And so that's what we are that's the term we're going by. But they're interchangeable in many ways. Higher self is a little bit more, I would say, a spiritual term. Your future self is the future version of you. That's an extension of you, right? And so in our product, which is called Future Self, you get to create your ideal future self, because as human beings, we truly believe that we're infinite and we can be anything and anyone we want to be, right? And that's the premise of the app. But to go back to my background. So yes, I started my career in clinical research, and essentially, actually during my undergraduate years, I was in a cognitive neuroscience lab. I was studying biology and psychology and really fell in love with research. I was working on NIH-funded studies, and just started working in. I was planning on going to med school and so on and so forth, but research really was calling me forward, and I got into drug research, particularly working in pharma, biotech, and developing medical interventions. I've worked in all different areas, and central nervous system was a focus. So Parkinson's, I worked in for many years on Parkinson's drugs, and mental health. Most certainly, that was also, and especially in the later years of my career, mental health was definitely a focus. I worked in schizophrenia, and then after my drug development career, I did end up in leading a digital health unit within a pharma company, which I was truly passionate about. And I think there's just so much room for that, right? And what we were building was prescription digital therapeutics. So instead of going to the doctor and getting prescribed a drug, you'd be prescribed this digital product, right?
It was like a VR
So what
experience?
we
Right.
were
Right.
creating, yeah, and there's all variety of different kinds on the market actually that's been
Mm.
FDA cleared and FDA approved.
Mm.
What we were building was virtual reality. So our focus was virtual reality as the medium. And, depression, anxiety, social anxiety was our most advanced product, which was super cool. It's something I'm so proud of. We spent years, developing the product as well as running clinical trials for it. And the trials were amazing, meaning that, the results were actually comparable to what you would see with drugs.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, and just going back to, where my passion comes when it comes to digital health, right, versus drug development. Drug development was something I truly believed in, and I felt really proud of the work I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe that drugs still, have a place. And however, for mental health particularly, I really do not think that is the route. I think there's a lot of other ways, right, to treat people with mental health disorders. And so for me, one of the biggest things that I took and I learned from my entire career in clinical research was the placebo effect. It was something that of course, I don't, obviously, it's not that I noticed, it's a known phenomena that every scientist, everyone understands, but sort of overlooks, right? In a sense that, yeah, it's the placebo effect. Okay, but what is that, right? So for me, it was astonishing to really try to understand like what is the mechanism of action here, right? How does this actually work? So it wasn't something that I could easily overlook, and so it just really put me down a whole rabbit hole of trying to understand what is this, what does this mean, and how can I implement this in my everyday life. That really became my mission, because I also had a lot of, limiting beliefs, right, around many things. And so I wanted to, and I understood that this is something that goes beyond just the body, right, because it very much has a physiological effect, observable,
Yep.
that, through various different studies that I was involved with, I was running, the data would astonish me, right? I was working on a Parkinson's study, and there were patients that were completely in a locked state that would start walking, right? And in some cases, even better than what we saw with the drug that we knew was effective, simply by being on the placebo, on the sugar pill, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
So that to me was something that I became obsessed with. And coming up with, future self, the idea was really that was a part of that, right? That was about how could we understanding the power of our beliefs, understanding the power of our expectations of reality and of ourselves. That's what that signifies, right? How could we help, how could we use that understanding to help people, right? And one of the most powerful beliefs of all is the belief in who you are. It's the belief in who you are and what you expect of yourself. And so how do we change that, right? And so the evidence is what I felt is needed for the brain to believe in a different future, to believe in a different sense of self. So actually my original idea stemmed from, how do we show people that, so video was my initial concept, right? The initial idea was, I want to create videos. I want people to see themselves, living their boldest dream, right? To actually be able to see themselves and hear themselves, to have this evidence that the brain needs in order to believe in a different future. This consistency and repetition is critical for that. So that was kind of how the idea of future self was born, from that vision, from that passion of, and not only for people, for myself too, right? For me and for the world, because, and this is actually 4 years ago when I came up with this idea. So AI wasn't quite where it currently is, and especially when it comes to video generation. And so I couldn't pursue it at the time, even though I started to work on it. And within a month or so, I realized, it would have taken a lot of millions of dollars to create what we're currently creating, and a lot more time. So I left actually, sort of my career, the corporate world, late 2024. And 2025 became the year of self-discovery. and essentially the destruction of the old self, right? You go through this process of when you lose your career or your job titles that you were so attached to, you lose your sense of self completely. So it was a moment of who am I, right? It was a period of trying to understand who I truly am and who I want to be, because most of my life that would be something I would lead with, right? What I'm doing in my career and my title and so on and so forth. It was such an ingrained part of my identity. And so losing that meant I lost myself. And it took me 3-4 months of, just really retracting and I spent, I think, most of the time, I would say, at home.
Yeah.
Journaling and meditating and crying, and a whole process of trying to understand what is my purpose here and what am I doing and what do I want the rest of my life to be, right? Because I've spent so many years focused in this particular industry, a career that I was very proud of, and I felt the need to disassociate from it in many ways, right? I really felt that need, but then I felt like, then who do I become, right? Who do I become without that? And 3-4 months in, this idea popped back up for me, and from that moment on, exactly a year ago to today, it has become the most beautiful obsession, a deep knowing that this is part of my mission. It feels truly so mission aligned and so aligned with what I'm here to do, to create, is to help people truly see who they are, right, in their true essence. And using neuroscience, using, psychological methodologies, and of course, AI, the power of AI. AI is very powerful because something like this would not be possible
Yeah.
in the past, right? So that's where it all kind of started. And I'm happy to talk a little bit more about really what it is, what FutureSelf really is.
Yeah.
Obviously, over the past year, it's evolved in so many different ways. The first version that we're releasing, that MVP, is out right now, and we'll be adding many features as we go.
Yeah.
It's more of a voice experience. So
may I interrupt you before we kind of go deeper into how it works? I wanted to also understand kind of the origin of what you've seen in your prior work that inspired you to oh, this is so powerful. So in the VR basically using digital medium to transform people's psychology and belief system. Can you talk a little bit more about some aha moments there? Like, what did you see that kind of blew your mind?
Yeah, for sure. So the virtual reality program that we created for social anxiety disorder was essentially a simulation, right? We simulated various different anxiety-inducing social situations that patients would be engaging with and essentially practicing, right? And most of these patients that we ran clinical trials on were very severe. So their case for social anxiety was very, very severe, to a point where some of them wouldn't leave their house, right? They wouldn't be able to be really just active participants of society, right? And which impacted their children. They couldn't go to teachers' parents, for example, meetings, right? So it was extensive. And so the results, yes, were miraculous, because when you're simulating this environment, right, this person, let's say with social anxiety disorder, has this self-concept and belief about themselves, right, that they're not good enough, they cannot engage in social situations, and they constantly have this worry of being judged, right, which holds them back from wanting to speak their truth and just wanting to engage in different settings.
Yeah.
And so simulating this environment and having them, just practice in a setting in the comfort of their own home, because the virtual reality programs, we would ship it to their home. It was truly life-changing for them. It really, really, the impact was incredible. And
What was the time frame between?
we ran a couple of different, one of them was 8 weeks.
Okay.
So 8 weeks, and then the next version of the product we created was 12 weeks.
Okay.
So it was a 12-week intervention, and with the goal of, it was meant to be I don't want to say call it a cure, but it was meant to truly treat the condition where after that you don't need, right? You're not,
Yeah.
it's an actual, again, not a cure, but in essence, a cure, right? Whereas we are on drugs, you have to consistently stay on the medication.
Yeah.
This is meant to change your belief in who you are, right?
Mhm.
That was the whole essence of it. It's meant to change who you believe you are. If you believe yourself to be someone who's awkward and weird and cannot have conversation, cannot hold conversation, and is constantly thinking everyone's judging them, right? And obviously you're going to retract and you're going to be very uncomfortable, and you will ensure that you stay away from that, from environments that make you feel that way,
Yeah.
right? So what we did with this is we changed that. We changed their self-concept. We changed the belief in their self-schemas, which is, patterns we end up, behavioral patterns that we end up thinking it is who we are. This is how we are. We are awkward. I'm a weird person. Everyone judges me, right? But when you get to experience yourself in a different way, it completely shifts.
Yeah.
It completely shifts. And that's precisely what happened in a period of 8 weeks, in a period of 2 weeks, with a consistent, again, the consistency is key, right? With consistent, practice, the impact was incredible. And yeah, so that was definitely something that inspired me to understand how, when you simulate an environment, it allows someone to see themselves in a different light and practice being a different version of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They transform. And that's what we saw. We saw transformation. People that were completely incapable of engaging in social situations suddenly becoming very comfortable,
Powerful,
right?
yeah. And the consistency, from my understanding, the neural pathways that you're developing, you're basically creating, it's kind of like a stream of water, and then the more consistent, the more water gets streamed, and it becomes a river. Then it doesn't just go away on its own if you are not exposed to social settings for a month. It's just that wiring is gonna continue to be more permanent for you, right?
Absolutely, exactly. So you create new neural pathways, right?
Mhm.
And new connections that didn't exist before.
Yeah.
And the more that this repeats and repeats, and the effect will be, longer lasting.
Mm-hmm. And what was the point of you leaving, like knowing that this is the end of this chapter, and now I need to either go into the hibernating mode to reconfigure myself and understand what's next for me? What was that like big moment for you?
So it was interesting because initially when I left, right, my intention was actually to start my own consulting firm right away, clinical trial consulting firm.
Mm.
And I thought I would be so excited because it was kind of a dream that I've had for so long to, I've been working in this industry. I had been working in this industry for 18 years, right? All my life, really. And not all my life, but,
Yeah.
and
Oh, your like professional life. Yeah.
all my professional life,
Yeah.
exactly, was dedicated to this industry. I even have a master's in clinical research, right? So it was, full dedication. I used to teach clinical trial courses in Canada at a university. So it was all I knew. And for some reason, I couldn't get myself to start. I just couldn't, and I didn't understand why. So I was stunned at myself. So it was almost like two sides of me, right? Which, that I couldn't quite grasp what's happening and why I'm not doing it. And I would push myself every day to start, um, and and just gave up. I gave up in a sense of, I said, okay, I will let you be. I will just let you be, because I start to feel and understand that there's a deeper resistance here. There's a reason why I'm actually not jumping in
Yeah.
to doing that, and allowed myself the space and time to heal, to understand what I need to heal, right? What am I healing? Because sometimes you don't even know what's happening.
Yeah. Of course.
That was the case. I was a little bit clueless, like what is happening with me. And actually what I did was, this idea did come back up rushing, and I started to pursue it very, very heavily, spending a lot of time thinking through it, ideating. And another thing that I did was I left Miami. I left Miami for 5 months. I
Mm.
gave up my apartment. I got rid of most of my clothes. I just sort of got rid of everything that, felt like I gave up all my corporate clothes.
Yeah. Which is a process of shedding and giving up all of the anchoring to your old self.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it just all felt so natural. I wasn't necessarily, it wasn't like a strategic plan. Now I'm going to do this and that and that. It was just naturally what I felt called to do. And I just allowed myself I just allowed myself to be and to let it kind of go through me, and for me to just follow the feeling, follow what feels right and my intuition and my gut.
Mm.
So it was a process of really connecting and building a much deeper connection with my truth, myself, my heart, my soul, and following the path. And at that time, I had actually read The Surrender Experiment, which is a book by Michael Singer, which was so inspiring. I actually went to visit him last year, and it was amazing to be in his presence, right? At the Temple of the Universe. And so having read that book, I felt that I wanted to surrender to the universe. And so I left Miami without much plan, not knowing really where I'm going to go, what I'm going to do. I left with my laptop. I left with, one luggage. And I kind of just allowed myself. I went to Southeast Asia for a month and a half or something, and then the rest of it in Europe. And it was just floating, flowing, seeing where I'm called to go. And I was working on FutureSelf, but in different environments. The environment very much alone. I spent most of that time by myself. I felt the need to be by myself.
You're cocooning.
Yes, and at the time I was starting to feel like, okay, I started to realize the identity that I needed to step into, right? To lead, to create, to build. And so it was the process of, destruction felt like it was over, right? It was now recreating me and stepping into my true essence, my true power. So when we say becoming a new person, you're not becoming a new person. You're becoming more and more you,
Yes.
right? Who you really are. And so it was a really beautiful process of healing. So every day I would spend time, meditating and visualizing and connecting with my future self, but also connecting with my past self and going into past memories and, changing memories. Because I believe we have the power to do that, to change the charge that, was left through some of the childhood memories, let's say, to essentially create this new version of me, but really my true self.
Hey, by the way, if you've been enjoying this conversation and you're thinking about starting your own show, my team and I specialize in exactly that. Our podcast agency have been producing this and many other amazing shows for our clients. And so to help you get started, we put together a handy podcast starter guide that walks you through all of the steps that you need to start and grow your show. You can find the link in the show notes, or you can just reach out to us if you need any help turning your podcast ideas into reality. All right, now back to the show. And from that space, the future self concept and idea really developed, and now you're really actively pursuing it. So now we can maybe talk a little bit more about what it is. So it's an application that has artificial intelligence as an engine of it. How does it work? So tell me a little bit more about the whole.
Yeah. So it's an AI personal transformation app. It is using, the latest and greatest neuroscience research and psychology, as well as research on future self continuity. It's a whole area of research, which is extremely fascinating. And essentially, the premise is you get to interact with your future self through various different experiences. Daily guidance from your future self, the future version of you that's already living your boldest vision. Meditations in your own voice. So everything is in your own voice. So it's voice cloning that we're using. Meditations in your own voice, rendered in real time based on whatever it is you're going through. But also, again, from the version of you that knows your past, knows your future and where you're going. And the premise is that, your future self is guiding you forward. Because you are, and ultimately for you to collapse time and distance to become your future self. So it's daily guidance and actions that are in alignment with who you're becoming right? So you start to show up as that person today. And the whole process is helping you hone in on a clear, bold vision for your future.
Yeah.
Setting the timeline for it, right? So giving the brain the anchor it needs. And we're starting with actually within 2 years on purpose, so that it's more believable and easier to navigate. And then we will be adding experiences where your future self will show up from, 50 years from now, your 80-year-old version, maybe the version of you that's about to take its last breath, right? It's really powerful. It's very powerful, actually. And so through these interactions, in addition, we have multisensory visualizations that we call future memories, where you get to really visualize the life that you're stepping into as if it's already real, right? And our brain doesn't actually know the difference between what is being experienced in the the outside, so-called outside world, and what you're vividly imagining, right? And so understanding that and using all five senses, we're creating new memories because it will get stored as memories. If it's emotionally felt as well, right? Emotion is a huge part of it. So the mechanism is essentially through repeated exposure to this new self, to this new version of you, you get to, over time, to start to feel that you are it, that you are that person, right? Because our brain is a prediction machine. Our brain is constantly predicting our future from our past, right? We have this default mode network that is responsible for creating this coherent sense of self. So your past, your current, and your future. And so what we're doing is we're giving the brain this data of a new self, right? And changing the projection, essentially. So once it starts to think, okay, who am I? What am I capable of? What have I done? There's all this new data, right? That's been encoded that it will refer to be like, okay, for example, if you're someone who really wants to be a public speaker, speaking in front of thousands of people, but you're so fearful of it, right? And that's because you have not done it before, right? It is not part of your sense of self. It's not part of your self-concept. So it is not deemed safe, right? Because our brain's number one goal is to keep us safe, right? And what's familiar is safe. Familiarity is safe. And so we all have this zone of comfort around us, right? Zone of safety. And so what we're doing is we are slowly expanding that zone by constantly giving your brain this data that you are this person, that you have done it, that you are doing it, right? And your future self will challenge you on a daily basis with micro actions that are in alignment, right? Sometimes they may be bold actions. So action is everything. Action is crucial because that's the evidence that you start to believe, yes, I can do this. Yes, I am that person. But also, going back to the example of the presenter, right? Someone who wants to be a presenter. If you're consistently visualizing, presenting in front of thousands of people, and you have your future self who tells you, yes, you are doing this, right? Through meditations, through daily guidance, and it starts to feel real, right? If you're engaging all five senses and so on and so forth. And so when it comes to then an opportunity that may come up for you to become a presenter, when you start to think about, whether this is something possible, comfortable for you, because you've had so much exposure to it, right? Your brain will process it differently. Your brain won't reject it and won't immediately, and again, your nervous system, right, needs to feel safe. So if it's familiar because it's something you've been practicing and you've been kind of, repeatedly exposing yourself to, then if it feels safe and familiar, then you're a lot more likely to be like, okay, yes, I can do this, right?
Step into that direction. So one can argue that the messages or the visions of the future self can only come from within. Um, and you're using an approach where the messages potentially come from outside, from an external tool that tells you what that version looks like. How do you reconcile the two?
Mm. Yeah. So, the messages are generally based on, again, using a lot of this scientific, neuroscientific and psychology and neuroscience, and a whole really a large sort of a body of knowledge that we've created and put together, the knowledge base, where the prompts are all based on that. But also, obviously, future self will get to know the user more and more. The more you interact, the more it will get to know you. Now, this is a great point and a great question. So for me, one of the most important aspects of future self, and when it comes to the design of every feature, of every iteration, is our focus is to bring people back to themselves. That's the power of the voice as well. Back to your truth, back to your self agency, back to your own knowing, your own intuition. So future self is actually designed to do that. By design, it will guide you back to yourself. It will guide you to sit down and meditate, not necessarily listening to future self telling you XYZ, but to the messaging will be, I'll be there in your mind. I'll meet you in your mind. You'll hear me. So our approach is to have, let's say even a guided journaling process where it's sort of like a meditation, but future self will be quiet, right? It will guide you to ask yourself the questions, and the premise is, I'm there in your mind. I'm with you, right? So that is a huge aspect of the mindset and how we're designing this, because for me, that has been one of the most powerful impacts, powerful, aspects of my life, is the connection I've built with myself, with my own inner knowing and intuition. And I really I want this product to do that for people. So it is really the opposite of what most AI sort of tools are doing, right? Most AI tools, it takes away your agency. It takes away your sense of self, your self-trust, because you become so reliant on this thing, right? And I did too initially. People can't even write a message without asking ChatGPT, right? And soon you realize that this could be very dangerous for us. And I specifically have designed future self, and will continue to do so, to ensure it does not result in reliance on the app and people outsourcing themselves and their own truth for it to consistently return people back to themselves, right? Return people back to their own intuition by various different practices. So yeah.
So help me a little bit understand a little bit better. From what I am gathering, the app is there's a lot of input that goes into the app that really tries to the AI behind the scenes that tailored for you is trying to gather as much input from who you are, what you care about, what you and trying to basically it's sensing from you, and it's trying to approximate what your future self might look like, and it's synthesizing it for you so that internally it's creating a bridge or connection to that future self, that the work is internal. It's not that you are connecting to an external AI voice, and that's your connection. The internal voice is just guiding you, giving you an approximate coordinates of where the future self is sitting, or like lives, or something like that.
Yeah, it's essentially bringing your future self that you may have in your mind to life, right? Your ideal future self. So designing who you want to be, right? What identity you want to step into, and the life you want to create and live, the impact you want to make, right? What is your mission here? So it's all of that. And then helping you get really clear on the identity of the person that will be living that life, that is living that life, right? So what are the values? What are your values? What are your beliefs about yourself and the world? Helping you turn limiting beliefs into beliefs that are in alignment with your highest good and with your goals and aspirations and who you want to be. What are the traits and habits of someone, of you who's accomplished this goal, right? What are your deep whys? Why do you really want this? To really hone in on that. And the environment, right? Help people kind of understand the environments they've put themselves in, how they can modify and change that in order to be, again, to be in alignment, right? Everything has to be in alignment for you to be able to create the life that you truly desire. So if your beliefs and values are misaligned,
Yeah.
it's not going to work. And so it's trained to do that. It's trained to identify misalignment and trained to help you stay in alignment with your true essence, with who it is that you're stepping into and you want to be. So there's a sense of accountability and just, constantly reminding you of who you are, right? And the meditations are also designed to help you in any moment of distress. You're about to go into a meeting and you lose your sense of self, or, you come out of a meeting and you got destroyed.
Yeah.
So it will remind you of who you are, of your truth, of your power, of what you've already done in the past.
Yeah.
You know?
And where does one start when they have no awareness of what their future self might look like? What do they like? They've been just doing what they've been told by society, and they haven't really gone on that deeper journey of self-discovery. Does the app cover um, different levels of self-awareness, and how does it bring someone from completely unaware to making step towards more awareness? Is it through some kind of questions? Is it through exposing yourself to different experiences and starting to feel that, oh, this experience I've enjoyed more, so maybe there's something. So how does that work? Yeah, tell me a little bit more
Yeah.
about that.
So currently as designed, it is designed for people who are seeking. It is designed for people who have a calling within them, who know they're meant for more, who feel it in their gut and heart and soul, but they just don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
They don't believe in themselves, but they're out there seeking.
Yeah.
That's who it's currently designed for. Now, that is just the first initial layer, but we will be certainly, my goal ultimately is to reach those people, the people that are completely unconscious,
Yep.
completely unaware of their patterns and conditioning, right? And think that this is what life is and this is who they are. That is my ultimate goal. And to reach those people, we will have to certainly have a slightly different version,
Mm-hmm.
different messaging. The messaging currently, it's definitely advanced. It's for people that understand, that have done some work,
Yeah.
but are stuck. We are initially focusing on career, financial abundance, and purpose.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is where we are right now in this world with AI disruption and people losing their jobs and careers getting wiped out. With that goes their identity and their sense of self. So to help people rediscover their truth, who they are, and step into their highest potential and who they're truly meant to be. So entrepreneurs will be focusing on aspiring entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs that are, whether you've exited, and a lot of people exit and they're completely lost and they, again, feel like they've lost who they are, their sense of purpose. So this is the initial beachhead market,
Yeah.
right? You have to start somewhere.
Yeah, low
Kind of
hanging fruit,
lower.
those who are already like
Exactly.
preconditioned to actually benefit from something like this. Yeah.
Exactly. Because a lot of it is education as well,
Mhm.
right? And, the aspect of it is to understand that our life, it's not an objective reality, right? This is a reality that your brain has actually created, right? Your mind is constantly rendering your future based on your beliefs and who you believe you are. That's the job of the default mode network, right? So, and your identity is the filter in which you see life through. And that's why it's so important to understand that. It is the filter that we see this life through.
Mhm.
We interpret experiences based on our identity, based on who we believe we are. And we attract experiences based on that as well, because our brain is obsessed with creating a coherent sense of self. And then you have your reticular activating system, right? Which is, again, very powerful for people to understand. But if you don't understand these things, then it's difficult for you to see the value in something like future self, right?
Right.
So your reticular activating system is, again, the filtering system. There's,
Mm.
billion bits of data per minute, right? And so your brain has to have a mechanism to filter that data and to show you, for your conscious mind to register what is relevant for you. And relevance is based on your identity, your sense of self, who you believe you are,
Yeah.
right? So it will filter through that lens as well as what you focus on. So if you're focused on your marvelous, incredible future self,
Yeah.
and you're constantly building this communication, this relationship with your future self and seeing yourself through that light, seeing all the incredible things that you're doing, right? That will change your RAS filtering. It will change the opportunities that will be presented to you. It's not magic or manifestation, as some people believe it's true neuroscience. That's how it works.
Mm.
And so by focusing on what you truly want, and most people are focused on what they don't want,
Yeah.
and that's the reality. So there's a lot of mechanisms here at play with what we've created and what we're creating. Another aspect is future self continuity. There is a large body of research. I don't know if you're familiar with it,
No.
but it's a whole field on its own where there's over the last several decades, researchers have been researching this concept of future self continuity. Is where do you have a coherent sense of self where you see your future self as a future version of you, or is it an outsider? And so based on fMRI studies, it's been shown that most people have very low future self continuity, meaning they don't see their future self as themselves. The parts of the brain that light up are the parts of the brain that light up when you think of a stranger, right? So, and further research has shown that people who have a higher future self continuity, it completely changes their current behavior,
Yeah.
right? Because you start to feel a sense of responsibility for that version of you. You start to feel a sense of, a connection, right? And so, and there's a lot of research on this, and it makes me so excited, to be honest with you.
Very cool.
And I'm actually bringing on a PhD student from Georgia Tech this next week, who will be working with us, who her research is on future self-continuity.
Very cool.
So it's really powerful. So we are, ensuring that all that research is incorporated in what we're doing, right? But for us, it's a little bit, so it's understanding the connection, building a connection with your future self, and how it changes your current self, how it changes your behavior. It is one of the most powerful mechanisms for behavior change that is very much untapped and not understood.
Yeah, interesting. So it's widely potentially accepted or believed that the world we live in this like quantum world where whatever manifests is just there's a set of probabilities that kind of collapse into the physical form, and that's the one and only manifested form of it. But let's say the future versions are it's a field of probabilities and possibilities, and applying that to your future version, you're saying that there's only one type that you're connecting with, and it's not a probability space. It's a singular point, like a north star towards which you're orienting yourself. How do you reconcile the maybe there are multiple future versions of you that are desirable, but you have to choose one? How does that work?
Yeah, 100%. So, I believe the same premise. I fully believe in, and it's not. So it's not that you can only. It's like, what channel do you want to tune into, right? You can choose. That's why it's your choice. So it's you. What are you called towards? That's why the intuition piece really matters. It's the piece of like I am being pulled towards this vision. I am being pulled towards, like, I was pulled towards who I currently am being, right? A founder of this company. Now, that was my calling. That's what I've really felt pulled towards. And so that is the future version of me that I chose to step into. I chose to tune into. I could have chosen any other, right? But this is the one that I felt called to. So I do believe that all different versions of us exist, right? That you can tune into, but so you can choose. It's a choosing process.
Yeah.
It's a choice,
Yeah.
right? It's a choice, but I believe that choice is not just like randomly, okay, who do I want to be today?
Yeah.
It could be two.
Yeah.
Sure. We're playing characters, right?
Yeah.
I have a character I'm playing. You have a character you're playing. You can choose to change characters at any time, right? But tuning in, it's about who do you want to tune, which version of you do you want to tune into? I have a practice of connecting with my future self. So I can envision any version, right? But I envision this particular life, this particular version that I've chosen at this moment in time. Now in a year, I may tune into a different version, right? So for sure, it's not what I'm saying. What we're doing is not different than that. The understanding that there's all different versions of us in the quantum.
Is that related to maybe free will, and it feels like we're free willing on the way to the future self, a desirable version of you, but in the way, um, that's the only path that you can go. Because if you're constantly listening to that inner voice, you will always end up in that same place. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not,
Yep.
there's no probability there. It's predefined already for this version of you, for this, um, maybe there are multiple instances of you living different other paths, but the one that you're living in, it is predefined. You're going to end up where you're going to end up, and the inner voice is the guide that shows you that path of the predefined path. I don't know if that made any sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It does.
It almost like it tells me that maybe there's no free will. There's just like, the only free will that we have is to listen to the inner voice. We either do it or we don't. If we do, we end up in that same place. If we don't, we can end up at anywhere.
Mhm.
You know.
I
But,
personally
mm,
do believe that. I do, that's why I really rely heavily on my intuition and my inner knowing, because I think that is it is there's a reason why, we're drawn to certain things. There's a reason why we're called towards certain things. My calling and my intuition and what I'm really excited by is not the same as yours or
yeah.
anyone else, right? So that is sacred and that is for me. And so it's a matter of having created a space within yourself where you can hear, you
Hmm.
can truly hear and understand. And it takes a little bit of work. It takes meditation. It takes sitting there in silence, right?
Yeah.
It's a practice. It truly is like everything else to hear the voice within.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I've reached a place in life that, I can hear the voice within. I can truly hear and I can understand it and I feel it and I know it. And so I follow that.
Hmm.
Yes, and I do believe that, yes, all different versions of us exist, but perhaps in this life, I'm meant to step into this particular one, right? Um,
And is that related to your ultimate purpose in life? Is that so in
Mine.
your definition, then your purpose is to follow the vector of that line, and it's not there's no destination. That's why I call it a vector, because it's a continuum, as you
It's a
said.
good, yeah,
Um,
right.
right?
Yeah. There's no particular destination. Like
And that vector, you call it purpose?
for, yes, for me,
Mm.
I do feel that this is my purpose. That there's just so much alignment. Every part of me is aligned, right?
Mhm.
Um, So there's no sense of resistance, and you just know, and it's just a feeling. It's hard to explain, to be honest.
Mm.
It's a feeling that you feel, and I don't know if that's going to change. I don't know if in 3 years, I'll be called towards a different purpose, but at this moment, this is my purpose, and it's not just about this company is my purpose. It's
Mhm.
my purpose is to help people see the truth, right, in who they are.
Mm.
And for myself too, that's been the journey of, I've always been curious about, like, I've been one of those people that, since I was young, I would just suddenly be like, where am I? What is this? Like, what
Yeah.
am I doing here?
Yeah.
Why is my, like, I would look at water and be like, where did this come from? Like, who named it? Like, just all these different things. The moments where you're just like, maybe, the simulation is glitching and you're like, what is happening? So I've had a lot of those moments. And so I've always been a very curious person. And I've always been trying to understand, like, what is this? Why are we here? What am I doing? What am I supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
You're born, you die. Okay, what's the point, right?
Yes.
And for me, one thing is that I am so cognizant and constantly aware of my mortality. I
Mhm.
am very much aware, which is the most beautiful thing for me. And that's something I'm actually incorporating in the app as well, because I think it's really powerful, not from a place of fear, but from a place of really understanding that it kind of takes you out of, of just this immersion, right? And it allows you to see it for what it is.
Yeah.
It allows you to act differently, to think differently, to not get caught up with things that really don't matter.
Yeah.
When you're fearful, when I think about, okay, I'm afraid of this, but I could die tomorrow. Like, does it really matter? Just go for it, you know? Life is, I don't want to call it life is short, life is long. Life is what it is, but it will end one day, and it could end in an hour when I leave here. It could end tomorrow. I have that awareness. And that awareness helps me move through this world differently. It helps me see it differently, right? It helps me think differently. So, last night I had a really interesting moment where like when we exchanged some text messages about it, and I was trying to think, okay, what am I gonna talk about? And then a moment of recognition, came over me,
Yeah.
where it was just like, you just be you. You just speak whatever that comes, because you're not speaking to perform, right? You're speaking whatever that comes through, that is meant for people to hear, that's meant to help people, whoever, even if it's one person, that's all that is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know, this level of consciousness came over me,
Yeah.
and it made me completely feel different
At peace. Yeah.
about,
But
like,
it's
trying to be like, oh, what am I going to talk about,
at peace with uncertainty.
at peace with
Yeah.
uncertainty, and just allowing yourself to just be, to just say what comes and what makes sense for you in that moment that you want to share.
No. I'll share a quick little story. I'm sure you'll appreciate it. I have a practice where I would go on the walk. I call it a conscious walk, where I would record myself, the voice record, and I would literally open a portal to my future self and then say, uh, future self, I'm opening this channel for you to communicate whatever messages need to come through. They come through, um, and they come through, and messages do come through.
Yeah.
And the more intention I put into, and the more like present I am, um, it's not like I don't have it on tap. Like I press the button and it just flows. Unfortunately,
I
I
know.
would love that. But the more frequent I do it, the more downloads, if you will, kind of flow through me. And uh, I find myself in those magical moments of saying something and observing myself saying it and recognizing that it's not me saying it. It's just like the words are here for me. They're not necessarily, yes, there are my words, because it is a continuum, but it is coming from there to here, like that, you know?
It's so powerful, and it's very true. And that's actually, what I'm really aiming to create, a portal, right? A portal for people with the app. I myself also have a, future self connection visualization practice,
Mm-hmm.
where sometimes it really feels like you've hit a target, where it just is so real that,
Yeah.
and yeah, the messages come through. I often ask as well, how'd you do it? What'd you do? How'd you get there? Tell me everything, And you connect, and you get the messages you need to get. And it's a really beautiful practice. And that is precisely what I also intend to do with the app, right? That it's not just the future self talking to you in the app. It's you allowing that space to hear what comes through in the ether.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of in closing, can you describe a future in which tools and modalities that you're working on and others that are working around the same consciousness expansion domain of work, describe to me that type of desirable future that you're contributing into?
Yeah. With AI, I think that you can create crutches for people, or you can create a mirror, right? And that's really what our aim is, to create that mirror. It's a really powerful tool to really help people see themselves for who they are,
Hmm.
also see their conditioning, see their patterns, to recognize it. Once you recognize it, that's when you can change it, right? That's when you can, you know, understand that there is a difference between your conditioning and your personality versus who you truly are, and recognizing that space, right? And understanding that you are an observer, right? An awareness, and you're not your thoughts. So
Mm-hmm.
that is the future that I want to contribute to, where we're using this incredible technology and it's going to expand and evolve, and God knows what it's going to become.
Yeah.
But we're using it in the best possible way, that the creators, right, as a creator, as a builder, um, being aware of the love of the consciousness that you are pouring into it, right? And that will be felt and that will be experienced by the end user. And that is something that I'm extremely cognizant of and extremely careful with.
Mm-hmm.
Who touches this app, who's involved, right? It's very important to me to make sure every single person is truly driven by the same thing that drives me, the mission to really help people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that consciousness is what I want to be poured into this. And that is the hope. That is the hope for the future.
I love it. Yeah. How can people find you, support what you're doing? Any resources that you want to point people to? No.
Sure, yeah. So right now we have our website, which is future-self.ai. And so people can go on there. They can join our sort of early, um,
Let's
just
call it a
waitlist,
yeah.
early tester. We are currently in the process of testing internally. So our MVP is out. We're going to move towards some user testing starting next week, and then go into beta. So it would be wonderful for people to join the list and be a part of the first set of users and part of the movement.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gazal, again for coming and sharing your beautiful vision and the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, listeners, for sticking around until the end. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I have, and I'll see you on the next one. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.